Walk it off. Stop being a baby. Those were the words my father said, while I lay motionless on the concrete, struggling to breathe, trying to understand why I couldn't feel my legs. My brother stood over me, half drunk and laughing, like it was all some harmless prank. My mother, she crouched beside me and hissed, "Don't ruin your brother's birthday." And I didn't yell. I didn't scream or throw a fit. I just stared up at the sky, blinking through the pain, wondering if this was the moment I'd finally disappear from their story. But I didn't disappear. I survived, and I made sure they were never able to pretend again. My name is Rachel Whitaker. I'm 30 years old. I was a second-grade teacher in New Hampshire before everything changed. I used to believe that time and distance could fix even the most broken relationships. That if I worked hard enough, stayed kind enough, maybe one day my family would see me not just as a burden or background character, but as someone worth loving. I held on to that fantasy for years, until one summer afternoon, it shattered. You wouldn't know it by looking at us. The Whitakers were picture perfect from the outside. A beautiful colonial home just outside Concord. White trim, navy shutters, a manicured lawn my father obsessed over. My dad, Gregory, was an accountant, cold, calculating, always pressed shirts and clean shoes. My mom, Linda, the kind of woman who wore pearls to water the hydrangeas. And then there were us, Darren, my older brother by 3 years, and me. Darren was the golden child, the quarterback, the class president, the one they bragged about at every dinner party. Me, I was the quiet one, the emotional one, sensitive, too sensitive. According to Dad, "You need to toughen up," he'd say. Anytime I cried or flinched or faltered, scraped knees, broken hearts, fevers, all met with the same solution: ignore it. Push through, smile. And for Darren, there were no rules. He shoved me down the stairs when we were kids. I was the one scolded for being dramatic. He locked me in the basement during a thunderstorm. I was told I had an overactive imagination. When I was 14, he swapped my shampoo with hair removal cream. My hair fell out in patches. My mom said I should be grateful it wasn't worse. By the time I turned 18, I moved out and swore I'd never come back. I went to college out of state, got my degree, started teaching, even began therapy to undo the damage they'd done. But guilt is a powerful thing. So is the fantasy of family. Every time they called, I answered. Every holiday, I showed up. Every insult, I swallowed. So when my mom called in June 2021 and said, "Rachel, your brother really wants you at his birthday this year," I paused, but I didn't say no. It would mean so much to him, she added. I knew it wouldn't. Darren didn't care if I lived or died. But I went anyway. I ran out of excuses. She mentioned it would be a backyard barbecue. New deck, new grill, new jet ski on the way. Your father's going all out, she said. And I already knew how this would go. Darren would be the king of the party, surrounded by friends who used to torment me in high school. My parents would smile proudly, tell everyone how well Darren's doing while offering me a polite nod. I'd stay 2 hours, keep a fake smile plastered on my face, and leave. That was the plan. What I didn't know was that it would be the last time I ever walked into their house without assistance. I packed an overnight bag, but booked a hotel nearby instead of staying in my childhood bedroom. A small boundary, but it mattered. I wore jeans and a blue blouse, something that wouldn't draw my father's disapproval. And on the 2-hour drive north, I rehearsed my coping strategies. Breathe. Don't react. Leave if things get tense. When I pulled into their driveway at exactly 2 p.m., the party was already in full swing. Cars lined the street, SUVs, sports cars. Darren's friends still living like they were in a fraternity. I recognized Tyler's red Corvette. He used to call me roadkill in high school. My mother opened the door with an air kiss and a once-over glance. "You made it," she said, flatly. "Everyone's out back. Darren just opened his presents." Of course. They hadn't waited. My presence was never needed, just expected. In the living room, I spotted new golf clubs, designer shoes, and a framed photo of a brand new jet ski. "Your father's having it delivered next week," my mom said proudly. For my 30th birthday, 6 months earlier, they mailed me a $50 department store gift card. I placed my card $200, cash on the pile, and walked toward the backyard, dreading every step. The backyard was exactly what I expected. Loud, crowded. Mostly men in their early 30s with beer cans and backwards hats. My dad manned the grill, flipping steaks like he was hosting a cooking show. Darren stood near the pool, drink in hand, holding court as usual. When he spotted me, he grinned. Well, look who decided to show up. I forced a smile. "Happy birthday, Darren." He pulled me into a hug that was a little too tight, too forceful. "Did Dad tell you how much this deck costs? 20 grand. Brazilian hardwood. Custom built." I nodded. "Looks nice." "You should see it when it's wet." He smirked. Something in his tone made me uncomfortable, but I brushed it off. For the next hour, I did what I always did, fade into the background. I chatted with a couple of guests, avoided alcohol, kept my distance from Darren and his crew. But I couldn't avoid what came next. The stories started. High school stories. Stories that always ended with someone humiliated and always started with Darren. "Hey, remember when we convinced Rachel the neighbor's dog had rabies?" he shouted, loud enough for everyone to hear. Laughter erupted. She wouldn't go outside for a week. Then Tyler chimed in. Or when we swapped her shampoo, she wore hats for a month. I stood frozen, face burning, stomach tight. I'd been 8, 14, vulnerable, and they were still laughing. I had enough. I picked up my purse and turned toward the house, leaving already Darren slurred, stepping in front of me. "I've got a long drive," I said, calm but firm. "Come on, sis. Just one drink, for old times." "No, Darren." He leaned in, smile fading. Still the same boring little Rachel, never could take a joke. I didn't answer. I just walked away. What happened next was not a joke. It was a setup. And it changed everything. I didn't know it yet, but I was walking toward the moment that would change the rest of my life. To get back into the house, I had to cross the new pool deck, the one Darren had been bragging about. I wasn't in a hurry. I just wanted to grab my bag, say goodbye to my parents, and leave with what little dignity I had left. But the second my foot touched the wood, I knew something was wrong. It was slick, way too slick. I froze for a half second, my eyes scanning the boards. There was a strange sheen, subtle but unnatural. It wasn't just water or condensation. It looked oily, slippery in a way wood shouldn't be. And then it happened. My foot shot out from under me. My other leg followed. I didn't even have time to scream. My back slammed against the concrete lip of the pool, followed immediately by the back of my skull. I saw stars bright, flashing white, and then blackness. My ears rang. My vision spun. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't feel. I couldn't feel my legs. I gasped for air. "Help!" I whispered, barely audible. "Help me!" The first face I saw hovering over me was Darren's. His mouth curled into a smirk. "Wow," he said. "You really sold that one." I blinked up at him, confused. I can't move my legs." "Oh, give it a rest," he scoffed. "You always did love the drama." I tried to lift my hips, my knees. Anything but nothing moved. Panic set in. My arms worked, but everything below my waist felt gone. I hit my back. I whispered, "I can't feel anything. Please call an ambulance." But he just laughed and turned to his friends. "She's always been like this. Theater kid through and through." A few people were standing nearby. Some looked uncertain, others amused. No one moved. Then my father pushed through the crowd. What now, he asked, clearly annoyed. Why are you on the ground? Dad, I choked out. I fell. My back hit the pool edge. I can't move. Please, I need help. He didn't rush to check me. He didn't kneel down. He didn't even look scared. He glanced at the deck and waved a hand. Oh, please. That wood's sealed. It's safe. Walk it off. Stop being a baby. That sentence, those exact words, would echo in my mind for years. Walk it off. I wanted to scream. Instead, I sobbed. I can't. I need an ambulance. My mom appeared beside him, her expression tight. She crouched down, looked me in the eye, and hissed, Rachel, stop this. People are watching. You've always been jealous of your brother. Don't ruin this for him. I was on the ground, paralyzed, and my own mother thought I was trying to steal attention. The pain in my back was radiating outward in waves. My head throbbed. I was nauseous, shaking. I turned my face to the side and tried not to throw up. I think she's drunk, I heard Darren say. Classic Rachel. I hadn't touched a single drop of alcohol. The sun beat down on my face. I could feel sweat running down my neck, but nothing below my waist. Just a terrifying, absolute void. I was slipping into shock. Please, I whispered again. Please, help me. And then, like a miracle, I heard a different voice. Excuse me, I'm a nurse. Let me through. A woman pushed forward, brown ponytail, blue shirt, no-nonsense tone. She knelt beside me and took my wrist. Hi, I'm Emily. I work ER at Brigham and Women's in Boston. Rachel, right. You're doing great. Just stay still, okay? Finally, someone who didn't look at me like I was lying. I explained what happened. She asked if I could feel pressure on my legs. I couldn't. Asked me to wiggle my toes. Nothing. She didn't panic, but her face tightened. I'm calling 911, she said, already reaching for her phone. She doesn't need that, my mom snapped. She just felt, we can take her to urgent care. No. Emily cut her off sharply. Your daughter has signs of spinal trauma. She needs a backboard, cervical collar, and immediate immobilization. Moving her could cause permanent damage. Those words, spinal trauma, hit harder than the concrete. My mother looked stunned for the first time. That's not possible. She just slipped. Falls are a leading cause of spinal injury, Emily replied, calmly but firmly. And based on what she told me, the impact was direct to her lower back and head. Emily gave the dispatcher our address and details. My dad, for once, was quiet. Then something clicked. I felt something on the deck. I said weakly, like oil or something slick. Emily stood and walked to the spot where I fell. She rubbed her fingers across the wood, held them up. This isn't water, she said. This is lubricant, some kind of sealant oil. All eyes turned to Darren. His face went pale. It was just a joke, he muttered. I didn't mean for her to get hurt. I just thought she'd slip, maybe fall in the pool. He trailed off as everyone realized what he'd done. No one said a word, not even my parents, because for once, they couldn't pretend it was my fault. For once, they couldn't spin the story. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. Emily stayed by my side, holding my hand. You're going to be okay, she whispered. Just stay with me. I didn't feel okay. I felt like my whole life had snapped in half. But for the first time, someone believed me. The sirens got louder. Not the party kind. These weren't fireworks or music. These were real, urgent, piercing. Sirens that shattered every illusion my family had ever clung to. Within moments, 3 paramedics, 2 women and 1 man, rushed through the backyard gate. They wore navy blue uniforms, calm but alert expressions, and moved with the kind of focus you only see when something is seriously wrong. The lead paramedic, a tall woman with a braid and eyes like steel, knelt beside me. Her name tag read Sarah. "Hi, Rachel," she said gently. "I'm Sarah. We're going to take care of you. Can you tell me where it hurts most?" "My lower back," I whispered. "And my head. I can't feel my legs. I can't move them." She nodded, signaling to her team. "Cervical collar, backboard. Let's stabilize now." I was vaguely aware of Emily briefing them, giving my vitals, explaining what I'd said, what she'd seen. Darren stood several feet away, frozen. My mom hovered, wringing her hands. My dad had vanished again, probably hiding by the grill, or pacing the front lawn. Sarah gently placed a collar around my neck, then locked eyes with me. "Rachel, we're going to log roll you onto the backboard. I need you to stay completely still. Okay, we'll do all the work." On her count 1, 2, 3, they moved me as a unit. The moment my body shifted, a white-hot explosion of pain radiated through my spine. I gasped, sobbing involuntarily. One of the paramedics squeezed my shoulder. "I know, we've got you. Hang in there." Once I was secured, they lifted me onto the stretcher. Sarah slipped an oxygen mask over my face, then started an IV. "Your heart rate's elevated. Blood pressure's low. Let's move fast." As they wheeled me toward the house, Sarah paused. "Was the surface you fell on naturally slippery?" she asked. "No," I rasped. "There was oil. My brother, he put it there, as a prank." Sarah stopped. Her jaw tightened. Emily spoke up. I felt it too. It wasn't water. Definitely some kind of oil. She didn't slip accidentally, he set it up. Sarah turned to her teammate. "Mike, document the scene. Get photos. Swab for residue." Mike nodded and went back to the deck, pulling a small camera from his bag. I glanced toward Darren. His face had drained of all color. "It wasn't supposed to go like this," he muttered. "She wasn't even supposed to fall that hard." Sarah turned toward him slowly. "Sir, did you intentionally put a hazardous substance on the deck?" He hesitated, then nodded. "I mean, yeah, but I thought she'd just fall in the pool or something. I didn't think." He didn't finish, because what could he say? That paralyzing your sister was just a joke that got out of hand. Sarah's tone shifted. It was no longer gentle. It was firm, controlled. "I'm requesting police assistance," she said into her radio. My mother finally spoke. "Police, is that really necessary?" Sarah didn't flinch. "Ma'am, your daughter has likely suffered a spinal injury caused by deliberate endangerment. That's not just an accident, that's assault." "And you delayed calling 911, Emily added quietly. That alone could cost her any chance of recovery. My mom's face collapsed inward. We didn't know." "But they did. They just didn't believe me, like always." Mike returned with photos and a small sample jar. Confirmed. Deck oil, fresh application, and handprints on the container in the garage. Sarah nodded grimly. "That's enough for now. Let's get her to the ambulance." They rolled me through the living room, past the party leftovers, half-eaten burgers, discarded beer bottles, and the gifts piled up like trophies. No one spoke. As we reached the door, I caught a final glimpse of my family. My dad had reappeared, jaw tight, arms crossed. My mom was clutching her pearls, eyes darting from neighbor to neighbor. Darren just stood there, shoulders hunched, mouth slightly open, like he couldn't quite believe he wasn't getting away with it this time. The moment the gurney reached the ambulance, a police cruiser pulled into the driveway. Blue and red lights. No siren. Just flashing proof that the story was no longer theirs to spin. In the back of the ambulance, Sarah stayed beside me, adjusting my oxygen, checking my vitals. "You're safe now," she said, her voice softer again. "Try to breathe. We're almost there." The morphine hit just before we reached the hospital. The pain dulled. My limbs still didn't move, but the panic faded to a hum. I closed my eyes. It was quiet now, but the damage was already done. When I woke again, it was cold and white and quiet. Monitors beeped beside me. A nurse introduced himself, Jamal. He gave me water, adjusted my bed, and said the neurosurgeon would be in shortly. And then came the question I dreaded. Can I move my legs? Jamal hesitated. The doctor will explain everything. Just try to rest. A few minutes later, a woman in a white coat walked in. Dr. Angela Kim, silver-streaked hair, steady eyes. She sat beside me and held a tablet with my MRI scans. You've suffered a spinal cord injury, she said gently. Specifically, a compression at the T12-L1 vertebrae. The impact caused significant trauma to your lower spine. I blinked hard. Am I paralyzed? Right now, you're experiencing paraplegia. We performed emergency surgery to decompress the spine and stabilize the vertebrae. You have what we call an incomplete injury, which means there's still hope for partial recovery, but we won't know how much function will return for weeks, maybe months. It felt like the room was shrinking. I might never walk again, I whispered. Dr. Kim didn't sugarcoat it. That's a possibility, but it's not certain. The next 6 months are critical. I turned my face toward the window. Summer sunlight streamed in through the blinds. Bright, ironic. Do you know what happened? She asked. I nodded. My brother poured oil on the deck, as a prank. And when I fell, they all said I was being dramatic. They didn't call for help. A nurse from the party did. Her expression shifted, a quiet flicker of anger behind her professionalism. That delay in care, she said, could have made your injury worse. Immediate stabilization is key in spinal trauma. Every minute matters. Every minute? That single sentence made something collapse inside me. They could have helped me, but instead, they went back to flipping burgers. The hospital room was quiet, too quiet. Machines hummed beside me, tracking my every breath, every heartbeat. I stared at the ceiling for what felt like hours, feeling numb in every sense of the word. Below my waist, nothing. Inside my chest, everything. Shock, rage, grief, shame, and something I hadn't let myself feel in years. Clarity. There was no going back. The door clicked open. A nurse stepped inside first. Jamal again. Behind him, 2 women entered in plain clothes, police badges around their necks. Calm, steady, watchful. Rachel, one of them said gently, I'm Detective Sullivan. This is Officer Chen. We'd like to ask you a few questions about what happened at your brother's party, if you're up for it. I nodded. My voice felt small at first. You already arrested him. Detective Sullivan nodded. Darren Whitaker is in custody. We've spoken to multiple witnesses, including the nurse Emily Carter and the paramedics on scene. We've also collected evidence from the deck. She pulled out a small notepad but didn't open it yet. Rachel, we believe what happened to you wasn't an accident, but we need your statement. This was the moment. The moment I could do what I'd been too afraid to do for years. Tell the truth. All right, I said. Let's do it. I told them everything. The moment I stepped onto the deck, the split second I realized something was off. The way my legs flew out from under me. The sound of my back cracking on the concrete. The pain. The silence. The way Darren stood there, smiling. I told them about his words. You always were dramatic. About my mom kneeling beside me, hissing that I was ruining the party. About my father telling me to walk it off. About begging for help while they discussed appearances. Detective Sullivan nodded slowly. Officer Chen scribbling notes. And you're certain you heard Darren admit to putting oil on the deck? Sullivan asked. Yes. He said it was just a joke. He didn't mean for me to get hurt like that. Did anyone else hear him? Emily, and probably half the backyard. And the delay in calling 911, no one attempted to help until the nurse intervened. I shook my head. I was lying there for at least 15 minutes. They accused me of faking it. Said I was trying to make it about me. Chen looked up, and in that time, you were unable to move. From the waist down, completely numb. The officers exchanged a glance. It wasn't surprise. It was the kind of look that says, "We've seen this before." Not the injury, the dismissal, the cruelty disguised as control. Sullivan closed her notebook. "Rachel, your brother is being charged with reckless endangerment resulting in serious bodily harm. Your parents are being investigated for failure to provide medical assistance. We'll be speaking with the district attorney this week." I expected relief. What I felt was hollow. "They could go to prison," I asked. "Yes," Sullivan said. "It depends on the court, but these are serious charges." They asked a few final clarifying questions and then stood to leave. "Thank you for speaking with us," Chen said quietly. "We'll keep you informed." The door closed behind them, and the room felt even quieter than before. That night, I didn't sleep. I stared out the window, replaying every moment from that deck, over and over. My family had watched me beg for help. They hadn't just failed me, they chose to ignore me. And suddenly, every birthday, every missed call, every moment I let them talk over me, wash over me, fade me into the background, it all came back like fire under my skin. I remembered being 10 years old with a broken wrist after Darren pushed me off my bike, and my dad telling me it was my fault for being clumsy. I remembered being 14, crying after the shampoo prank, while my mom stood silently in the hallway and walked away. I remembered 28 years of being erased, gaslit, shamed, for feeling too much, for wanting too much, for not shutting up. And for the first time, I didn't want to make peace. I wanted justice. The next morning, a woman in a navy blazer walked into my room holding a tablet. She introduced herself as Camille Johnson, Assistant District Attorney for Merrimack County. "I have reviewed the police report and medical records," she said. "We believe your case warrants felony charges against your brother and possible criminal negligence charges for your parents." I nodded. "I've already spoken with detectives." She took a breath. "Rachel, I also want to talk to you about something else. Civil litigation. You have the right to pursue damages, including medical costs, lost wages, long-term care, and pain and suffering."
I blinked. "You mean sue my own family?"
Yes. Criminal charges are about justice for the public. Civil suits are about justice for you. I swallowed. I'm not sure I want to drag this out. She gave me a look, not pushy, just honest. "You may not have a choice. Your injury is life-altering. We estimate your medical expenses could reach over $1 million over your lifetime. Insurance might cover some, but not all. Not the home modifications. Not lost income. Not what you've endured." She slid a card across the tray beside my bed. "Michael Greenberg, personal injury attorney. He specializes in spinal trauma cases. I strongly recommend speaking to him." I nodded slowly. "Okay." The rest of that day blurred into a quiet rage. Not the kind that burns hot. The cold kind. The kind that comes after betrayal so deep. It drains the warmth out of you. I wasn't just someone who got hurt. I was someone whose pain had been dismissed by the people who should have protected me. And that's what made this different. That's what made this worth fighting. Not because I wanted revenge, but because I finally understood what it meant to be believed, and I wasn't going to let them erase that again. The first time I met Michael Greenberg, I was still in a hospital bed. He walked in with a quiet confidence, wearing a navy suit and carrying a leather folder. No theatrics, no fluff, just a direct gaze and calm voice. "Ms. Whitaker," he said, "I'm very sorry for what happened to you, but I want you to know your case is strong. I was exhausted, in pain, confused about everything from insurance to the sudden silence from my family. But something about the way he said that your case is strong stuck with me. I nodded. Okay, where do we start? He explained everything. The process, the documentation, the kinds of damages we could seek, medical expenses, long-term care, lost wages, pain and suffering, future income potential, things I hadn't even considered yet. He told me about homeowners insurance and how part of the damages might be covered by my parents' policy, but for full restitution, we'd likely need to pursue their personal assets. That part hit hard. These are still my parents, I said quietly. Michael didn't flinch, and they let you lay on the ground for 15 minutes with a spinal injury. That's not just neglect. That's life-altering harm. This isn't about vengeance. It's about ensuring you have what you need to survive and rebuild. I looked down at my legs, covered by a hospital blanket. He was right. I signed the paperwork that day. The legal process started while I was transferred from acute care to a specialized spinal cord rehabilitation center in Boston. The facility was clean, modern, and intimidating. They rolled me into a private room and introduced me to my new team, a rotating staff of physical therapists, occupational therapists, psychologists, and nurses who all seemed far more confident about my future than I was. My primary physical therapist was Brian Lopez, mid-30s, patient but blunt. Our job, he said on day one, is twofold: maximize recovery and maximize independence. I had no idea what either of those meant in real terms, but I showed up. Every morning started the same stretching, range of motion checks, then hours of exhausting work, parallel bars, balance training, wheelchair mobility, transfer practice from bed to chair to shower bench, chair to car simulation. Some days it felt like progress, other days like punishment. My hands blistered from pushing wheels. My back ached from overcompensation. My pride had shattered regularly. But I kept going, because I wasn't just rebuilding my body, I was preparing for battle. Michael's team began collecting evidence witness statements, photos of the deck, the audio recordings from body cams on the paramedics and police, and most importantly, Darren's own admission. They also subpoenaed my medical records, my therapist's assessments from before and after the injury, and every bill I'd accumulated so far. It was sobering to see it all laid out, line items turning into dollar signs. Every scan, every night in the ICU, every brace, every minute with a nurse. It was like putting a price on what they took from me. A month into rehab, I gave my first sworn deposition. They set up a private room with video recording equipment. My lawyer was on one side. Darren's legal team was on the other, two men and a woman in expensive clothes and guarded expressions. I told them everything, again, for the record. They asked questions, poked around the edges, suggested that maybe I exaggerated the delay in care, tried to minimize the prank, asked if I had any prior lower back conditions. No, I said, just a history of being ignored. Even Michael smiled at that one. A week later, we deposed my parents. This time, I wasn't present, but I read the transcripts afterward. My mother cried, blamed miscommunication, claimed she panicked. My father was colder, more defensive. He insisted he thought she was faking. There it was again, that word. Faking. As if I'd somehow staged spinal paralysis in front of a backyard full of people to ruin a barbecue. The court didn't buy it. Neither did the insurance investigators. 3 months after the fall, Michael informed me that my parents' homeowner's policy had agreed to pay the maximum liability $1 million. But we weren't done. They still have retirement savings, stocks, and that house, he said. We can negotiate, or we can go to trial. I paused. Negotiate. Despite everything, I didn't want to spend years in court. I wanted closure. Eventually, my parents agreed to settle selling the family home, cashing out a portion of their retirement accounts, and creating a $2 million trust for my ongoing care. The agreement included long-term medical coverage, accessible housing support, and loss of career compensation. They never reached out. No letter, no call, nothing. Darren, on the other hand, pled guilty to felony reckless endangerment. He took a plea deal, 5 years total, 2 in prison, 3 on probation, mandatory therapy, a restraining order. I didn't attend the sentencing. I watched the live stream from my apartment, sitting in my new wheelchair beside the ramp that had just been installed outside my building. When the judge read the sentence, I felt nothing. No victory, no closure. Just air. And for the first time in months, it was enough. Recovery, meanwhile, became its own full-time job. By month 5, I had regained sensation in parts of my thighs, then flickers of movement in my hips. Nothing predictable, nothing easy, but something. Brian and I kept working. He built me a custom bracing system to help me stand between bars. I cried the first time I did it. Not from pain, though there was plenty, but from disbelief. I didn't think I'd ever feel this again, I whispered. You're doing the impossible, he said simply. There were setbacks, infections, spasms, pain flare-ups that knocked me flat for days. But I kept going, because I had purpose again. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't walking on eggshells. I was walking toward something real. And through it all, something else happened. People showed up. Not my family, but my colleagues, former students, a community I hadn't even realized I'd built. They brought meals, raised money, sent cards, installed ramps, and reminded me, over and over, that I mattered. I also started working part-time again, remote curriculum consulting. Small steps, but steps all the same. By month 6, I wasn't just surviving. I was reclaiming. 3 months after my settlement, the dust began to settle, but life didn't snap back into place. The house I grew up in was sold. My parents moved out of state, vanishing into a quieter, smaller life in Florida, leaving no trace, not even a note. Darren served his time. He wrote to me from prison a long, handwritten letter, full of apologies. He didn't beg for forgiveness, he just admitted, for the first time, what he'd done. I read the letter twice. Part of me wanted to throw it away, but another part felt the weight of his words. They didn't change the past, but for the first time, I sensed real regret. Still, I wasn't ready to write back. Meanwhile, I focused on recovery. Every day, I put in the work. My legs trembled between the parallel bars, braced by steel and hope. Each small step felt monumental. It wasn't walking not the way I used to, but it was forward. My medical team called it remarkable progress. I called it surviving. I built a new life in an accessible apartment with ramps and wide doors. Friends became my chosen family. My former students sent cards. My coworkers checked in. And the support I found made me realize what real community looks like. I learned to drive with hand controls. I learned to stand on my own, even if just for a few seconds. And slowly, I learned to breathe again. Sometimes, justice looks like a courtroom win. Other times, it looks like standing up on weak legs, refusing to let the people who broke you define your life. I wasn't whole, but I was here. And I was finally free to decide what came next. 1 year later, my life doesn't look anything like I once imagined. I move slower, but I move with purpose. Every scar, every adaptation is a line in the story I now own. I'm no longer searching for closure from people who could never give it. My family's silence doesn't haunt me. Their absence made space for the people who truly show up: friends, colleagues, neighbors, even strangers who heard my story and offered support. Work is different now. I consult on curriculum design from home, and twice a week I visit the rehab center where I spent those grueling early months. I sit with new patients, people scared and angry and lost. I tell them what I wish someone had told me. It's okay to feel broken. It's okay to mourn. But survival isn't just about getting your body back. It's about finding your own worth, even when others deny it. Some days are good. Some days are brutal. But even on the hard days, I'm never as alone as I used to feel in a room full of my own family. I've built something real from the ruins. I don't know if I'll ever forgive Darren. Maybe forgiveness isn't the goal. Maybe it's about drawing a line and refusing to let someone else's choices define the rest of your life. I get to decide who I am now, and that power feels better than any apology. If you've ever been dismissed, gaslit, or made to doubt your own pain, I hope my story gives you the strength to speak up. You deserve to be heard. You deserve to heal. Before you go, let me know in the comments. Have you ever had to rebuild after someone tried to erase you? If this story moved you, like and subscribe. You're not alone, and your story isn't over. Thank you for listening. Take care, and don't ever let anyone else write your ending.